Welcome to Echoes of Pain, how unresolved trauma fuels harmful behavior. Today, we explore how unhealed emotional wounds can manifest in harmful actions, often impacting both the individual and those around them. By understanding these patterns, we can break cycles of pain and create space for healing, growth, and healthier connections. Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that overwhelms a person's ability to cope, often leaving lasting emotional, psychological, and physical effects. It can result from a single intense event or repeated exposure to harmful situations. Trauma affects individuals in diverse ways, often shaped by the nature and duration of the distressing experience. Understanding the different types of trauma helps us recognize how past pain can influence behavior, emotional well-being, and relationships. Number 1, acute trauma. It results from a single overwhelming event that causes intense emotional distress, such as car accidents, physical assault, natural disasters, or sudden loss of a loved one. Chronic trauma. It results from repeated exposure to distressing events over a prolonged period, such as long-term domestic violence, childhood neglect or abuse, ongoing bullying, or living in conflict zones. Complex trauma. It occurs due to multiple traumatic events such as prolonged childhood abuse, human trafficking, or repeated sexual assault. And lastly, secondary trauma. It occurs when a person is indirectly affected by someone else's traumatic experiences, often through close emotional involvement. Individuals affected by such include counselors working with trauma survivors or journalists covering violent events. Links between unresolved trauma and violent behavior. Unresolved trauma can have profound effects on a person's emotional and psychological well-being, sometimes leading to aggressive or violent behavior. Trauma, particularly when experienced during childhood or repeatedly over time, can disrupt the brain's ability to process stress and regulate emotions properly. This can manifest as heightened irritability, impulsivity, and difficulty managing anger, all of which can contribute to violent tendencies in certain situations. The key psychological factors in trauma include hyperarousal, where people with unresolved trauma may remain in a constant state of fight or flight, leading to exaggerated reactions to perceived threats. Emotional dysregulation, where trauma can impair the brain's ability to manage intense emotions, making it harder to respond to conflict calmly. And lastly, reenactment of trauma. Some individuals may unconsciously repeat patterns of violence they experience, either as a coping mechanism or due to normalized behavior in their upbringing. Perspective 1. It focuses on the impact felt by someone dealing with a loved one, friend, or partner who is projecting the unresolved trauma through violent behavior. Emotional effects on the recipient include confusion and emotional turmoil, where the person on the receiving end may feel conflicted, especially if the violent behavior seems to stem from pain rather than pure malice. Fear and anxiety, where constant exposure to someone else's aggression can make the recipient feel unsafe. Guilt and self-blame for the other person's behavior. And lastly, empathy versus self-preservation, struggling to distinguish between compassion for the person's trauma and the need to protect oneself. Perspective 2. It explores the internal battle faced by someone struggling with unresolved trauma that manifests as violent tendencies. Emotional effects include overwhelming anger, where unresolved trauma often results in frequent outbursts of anger, shame, and guilt. After acting violently, the individual may feel deep regret but remain trapped in the cycle. Emotional numbness, where some may suppress feelings leading to emotional detachment. And lastly, hypervigilance. Trauma can cause heightened sensitivity to perceived threats, triggering aggressive reactions. Prevention and interventions, early education and awareness, through teaching emotional regulation and healthy coping skills from a young age can reduce long-term trauma effects. Positive parenting practices, where encouraging nonviolent communication and nurturing environments helps prevent trauma in children. Community support programs. Through safe spaces, mentorship, and peer support, it can prevent isolation and emotional distress. And lastly, stress management techniques. Encouraging mindfulness, journaling, and physical activities can reduce stress buildup. Mental health emergency hotline numbers include by Gender-Based Violence Management at their helpline 0800 720 565 and Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Rapid Response number at 1195. Acknowledging your trauma is the first step to breaking its cycle. Healing takes courage, but it's a powerful journey toward growth and healthier relationships. Let's keep the conversation going. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Millennial Digital for more impactful content on mental health and healing.